George Carlin said, think of how stupid the average person is, and realize half of them are stupider than that. What real life example have you seen that validates this view? When my daughter was born, we had to see the hospital pediatrician before we could switch to our usual one. We're in a tiny exam room and he's going over the dos and don'ts for new parents. To precede this, he's an older southern man, and I assume she will be sleeping in a crib in the nursery. We have a bassinet set up beside the bed to make night feeding easier. She can't sleep with you. She won't be in the bed. She has a bassinet beside the bed. If she sleeps in the same room, there will be too much carbon dioxide and she'll suffocate. That's what causes SIDS. Then isn't this exam room unsafe? We put in a complaint with the practice and the hospital. That's some ridiculously incorrect information to be spouting off at people, especially parents who take everything a doctor says as gospel. I can't even find the logic in that. Not only this, but also co-sleeping in the same room is shown to reduce the incidence of SIDS. It is thought that the baby hears you breathing and it helps them self-regulate. Yet, the closer they are, the more they regulate. It's theorized that's part of why kangaroo care helps NICU babies. I worked at Little Caesars and we were proofing the dough for pizza. My boss said, at 7 p.m., that the dough needed to rise for 12 hours, and took out her calculator to do the math. So I said that's gonna be 7 a.m. Then she said the dough will expire in 48 hours and started doing the math again. I told her it would expire 2 days from now, and she said that's kinda weird how that works out, huh? I quit shortly after that. The most surprising thing here for me is that Little Caesars bakes fresh dough, and actually bothers with a long leavening time. Sounds like she didn't know how to tell time. Surprised she knew how to use a calculator. Why would you quit? You could have tricked her into paying you double for working half the hours. On 9/11, the general manager called his daughter who was attending ASU to wake her up and make sure she saw what was going on. The customer service manager said, "It won't be on her TV yet. Arizona is 2 hours behind us. Why didn't Australia warn us about 9/11? After all, they are several hours ahead." Reminds me of a Facebook post that went, "Just found out China is like 12 hours in front of US. Why didn't they tell US about 9/11? Fuck China, 3 billion people died." Not verbatim but close. Fun fact about China: as large as the country is, the Chinese government makes the entire country be on one time zone. Essentially it would be like East Coast and West Coast America operating the same hours. Infantryman was told to trim the hedges, so he lifted the lawnmower. His buddy started it. As a brand new medic, I spent about 6 hours pulling finger meat from the hedges. Holy shit, that's dumb. Holy shit, that's a thumb. I used to work in aircraft maintenance. There was a cage used for putting tires inside when pumping them up, to protect people if a tire burst due to the high pressures involved. Well, a story we always got told was of a trainee that was told to go pump a tire up and was instructed, "Make sure you use the cage." Lo and behold, someone checked on him 5 minutes later and there he was, squeezed inside the cage with the tire half inflated. "Airman, we're reassigning you to the Army." Well, the guy involved was Army Air Corps, so you're not far off. Every time I put on my glasses so I can see better while looking for my glasses. At the start of working from home due to COVID, I had a few users submit tickets for connectivity issues. These tickets got through 2 lines of support before landing in my queue. Turns out that the corporate Wi-Fi doesn't follow you home and you need home internet in order to connect to the VPN. The woman that called into a radio station to complain about the deer crossing signs on a highway saying that the deer will see the sign and consider this place a safe place to cross the road. National Parks and Services gets complaints from people when the buffalo aren't out. This is a perfect example of this. What boggles my mind is how she actually sounds rather intellectual and is decently well spoken. So for someone to be so damn off base is so crazy to me. I just for the life of me can't understand her point of view. Just scroll down a webpage or Facebook feed and have a look at the ads. Things like only 2% can solve this puzzle, shit like that. Those ads get posted so much because they actually work on a lot of people. My fab of those. See what you're fandom, whatever. Name is based on your date of birth, hometown, first and last letters of your mom's maiden name, etc. Things like you have a chart, and people post their results. And it's a gold mine for anyone looking for the answers to those pesky security questions. LMAO. There are still people who fall for if you post your password it comes up as asterisks. Watch. Big Penis Lover 1010. Well, it works. These are the worst. Only 5% of people are smart enough to get this right. Can you? And then it's usually some stupid grade school riddle that I've known the answer to since I was 7. Or some complicated math equation that any middle schooler who remembers PEMDAS could easily solve. I actually had people on my Facebook who would share their results for these tests. Like, OMG, look how smart I am. I knew the answer. I mean, sure, there are probably people who wouldn't be able to answer these, but it's definitely not 95%. And if you're dumb enough to actually believe that only 5% of the people who read that post can solve it, and feel like knowing the answer somehow gives you bragging rights, you're definitely not winning any intelligence awards. You are severely overestimating how many people remember middle school math. I worked with a lady who was remarking on how a friend of hers had lost a bunch of weight. She pondered, I wonder how many Diet Cokes she had to drink to do that. Edit. Same lady was convinced beyond repair that when you sneeze, the air only comes out of your nose. There was no convincing her otherwise. Man, this made me a little sad. People are so susceptible to marketing these days that they think just because something is called diet it must be good for them. Reminds me of my flatmate from uni who used to drink smart water before taking exams. Man, I wish the air only came out of your nose. It'd be a lot easier to clear the airways during a cold or allergy season. A former coworker was talking about how she wanted to go back to school to get her master's degree because she only had a bachelorette degree and wanted more job opportunities. I said, do you mean a bachelor's degree? She insisted it was pronounced bachelorette when it was given to a woman. Then she led me back to her office and pointed at her diploma, to the word baccalaureate, and said, see, bachelorette. I had a co-worker, really sweet girl but dumb as shit, tell me she smoked American spirits because they were non-addictive. See, as she showed me the box. Oh, honey, no, that says no additives. Such a sweet, stupid girl. She was a good server, at least. These aren't addictive. I've quit 3 times already this week. At a barbecue restaurant, I saw the barbecue plate was 8.99 and the barbecue platter was 9.99. There was no description underneath either one. I assumed you get an extra side, but I asked the waitress what the difference was. In all seriousness, she said $1. Well, she wasn't wrong. In grade 10, we had a science test, and the teacher gave 1 point for putting a date on the paper, and 1 point for your name on the paper dart, and then there were 98 points for the rest of the test. A guy sitting in front of me got 0.5 out of 100. Didn't write the date and only wrote his first name. That's fucking hilarious. Reminds me of the time my classmate copied the test answers of my other smarter classmate in 2nd grade. He got caught because he copied the name too. 2nd grade, I saw that happen in high school. The next day the teacher was just savage, publicly calling it out. 30+ years later I still remember him starting out the class congratulating Todd on doing so well on the test. But next time, he didn't need to hand in 2 copies. Oh, and by the way, I didn't get anything handed in by Mike. Sorry Mike, you get a 0. University professor, I have caught it at this level. Code comments. All I need to say, I definitely catch it there too. A few years ago I had a test question in an intro to programming course. To mix things up a bit, I had them run a function where the input string was the first 4 letters of their first name followed by the first 3 of their last name, with some padding rules for students whose first last weren't long enough. I once got into an argument with someone over my own name. There are 2 pronunciations, German and English. and they just couldn't accept the fact that I use the English pronunciation despite the fact that we were speaking English and it's what I've used my whole life, but nope, I was lying to mess with them. I've got two little girls who were born 15 months apart. They look pretty similar, and we get asked if they are twins pretty often. Even though one is quite a bit taller, you'd be forgiven for thinking they were fraternal twins. But yeah, I once got into an argument with somebody over whether my daughters are twins or not. It wasn't until I pointed out that I was literally there, watching them being birthed, that they finally conceded. Much the same thing happened with my younger sister and I. We're 22 months apart, but because of genetics, we were much the same size up until our teens. On more than one occasion my parents were asked if we were twins. My sister and I aren't even biologically related. People are always saying that they could tell we're sisters because we look so much alike. I was doing a covered decon of a medical supply warehouse that had a confirmed positive employee not too long ago, and while my team was inside doing our thing, the floor shift manager was following us around without a mask or gloves or really any of the proper PPE except for a high-vis vest and steel toe boots. I had to tell her to leave the room. I was fogging with virucide. Edit. Meanwhile, we were wearing full level C hazmat suits with P100 combo cartridge respirators and all seams taped up. The fact Florida had to tell people not to shoot at the hurricane. There were people in Adana, Turkey that shot at the sun because it was too hot. Even better, the fact that NOAA even has to have a section on their site explaining why using nuclear weapons against hurricanes is far worse than the worst idea you can possibly imagine. But at least nobody with actual access or the power to authorize the use of nuclear weapons would ever have an idea that blindingly stupid. No, take it back. Take your comment back. When your only tool is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. That trick where you call water by a scary chemical name like dihydrogen monoxide so that people will want to regulate or ban it. My local pool contains high quantities of a chemical used in industrial cleaning solutions, and is used to cool nuclear reactors. Think of the children. That people act surprised at the total death count going up. It's always going to go up. If it was going down, that's an entirely different pandemic altogether. Lol. I hope the zombies follow social distancing. Well, if they wear masks it may slow the infection rate, seeing as they wouldn't bite so easily. When I was a sophomore in high school, a classmate asked to borrow a pen, and I lent him one of mine that had the Eiffel Tower on it. He asked where the building was from, and I said Paris. He gave me a confused look and asked where Paris was. Was it further away than Chicago? Now it was my turn to be confused. We were in high school. How the hell did he not know Paris was in France? But whatever. Maybe he's not the brightest. So I inform him that Paris is in France. But he still looks utterly confused. I assume he misheard me. So I started explaining it France. You know, like France. From history class, World War II, Napoleon, that France. He said he was bad at history, and had never heard of France before. He then asked me if it was another state, or was it like a region of our state. Utterly baffled at this point, I tried to explain that it was another country, and it was in Europe. Exasperated, I remember saying, you know, Europe, that other continent. He still looked confused, so I added the land across the ocean. Finally, there is recognition on his face. He tells me he heard of oceans before. He thinks he understands now. I remind you that this encounter, with a student who didn't know what Europe was, took place in high school. When I was in high school, we were reading a short story about what would have happened if the Japanese attacked us back with nuclear weapons after Hiroshima and Nagasaki. A girl in my class raised her hand and said something along the lines of, why does this matter? None of it is real anyway. The teacher had to ask her to clarify, but this girl thought World War II and the bombing of Japan were just from a movie and didn't actually happen. The best part is, the girl was half Japanese.